Let's see what the stew has for us today.
Welcome to the Gnomecast, Gnome Stew's tabletop gaming advice podcast. Here we talk with the other gnomes about gaming things to avoid becoming part of the stew, so I guess we'd better be good. Today we have a special guest as we talk to Adam Bradford from Demiplane. Just in case someone doesn't recognize the name, can you introduce yourself to the audience and let them know who you are in the world of tabletop games?
I am the aforementioned Adam Bradford, and I am currently the Chief Development Officer at Demiplane, and I was formerly the VP of Tabletop at Fandom, a gloriously made-up title that I had at that other gig, and I founded D&D Beyond and ran D&D Beyond there for the last 4 years before I joined Demiplane in February.
All right. I knew your name from somewhere. So
this is the first time we've met, actually, right? Yes.
Speaking of Demiplane, can you describe for anyone that's listening that hasn't heard of the website before what that is?
Yeah, Demiplane connects tabletop role players with video and voice chat, shared journaling, tasks, notes, trying to pull as many things into one place as we can. So we found out that especially as the pandemic hit and people were playing more of these games online than ever before, there was a lot of alt tabbing going on. And so we wanted to see if there were some ways that we could start to unify and pull those things together. And so we also have matchmaking and the ability to find groups out there. So if you're playing and you have a couple of people that you want to join an existing party, you can recruit players and people can find those last couple of slots and join you for your adventures. Or if you're looking for a game master, you can notify that that's what you're looking for. And so we're connecting people. It allows people to provide paid games. So we're seeing a continued rise of professional game mastering, which is a really exciting trend for the industry. And we've really loved seeing how that is going so far. And also even for non-paid games, there's a way that people can provide a tip to their game master at the end of that. So this used to be when we were playing in person before these pandemic times that, I was going to bring some chips or some drinks over with me as I was getting this ready and to play. And Demiplane allows you to simulate that as well in this online environment. And, overall, what we are aiming to do is to make every part of the play experience better. And that includes before a session, during a session, and after a session. So, trying to handle some of the logistics ahead of time of getting people scheduled and getting people together to play. And then during the session, keeping the focus with voice and video on the players themselves and what they're doing. There's screen sharing. There's a variety of, other things that can kind of keep people in the same spot. And then, even after the session, this is a persistent chat and messaging and whispering between players. And so this is where if you're trying to strategize with your party, out of the listening ears of your game master, you can do that, in between sessions. And so, like I said, just kind of trying to bring as much of that together into one place as we can to improve the experience.
All right. We just had actually a pair of Gnomecast episodes where some of the other gnomes were having some discussions about professional GMming and how that's been evolving and things like that. So it is interesting to get a little bit of overlap in that.
Yeah, it's definitely people are saying that it's coming, but I think it's here. There are people out there who are at a minimum supplementing their income, and some people have been able to make it go full time. So it's going to be really interesting to keep an eye on that in the months and years to come.
All right. So if you were to say that certain gaming software was no longer needed because of Demiplane, what would that software be?
Yeah, I think that, again, we're trying to aggregate so many things into one place. And so we believe that there is a lot of value in building the Discord of tabletop gaming. I think it's interesting to think through how tools like Slack have been used in a professional work environment for many, many years. And then you end up getting a chat solution like Discord that came along and really tailored that to video gaming. And it has, of course, Discord is definitely, a big player in that video gaming space, and it's kind of broadened its reach as well from there. And I think that when you think about what they did for video gaming, we like that idea of doing something similar for the tabletop role playing space. And I think there are different needs for it. And so Discord will work fine. Zoom will work fine for video, chatting while you're trying to play with folks in your group as well. But we do think that with Demiplane, having purpose built solutions that are really intended for tabletop role playing is going to end up making a difference. And of course, we're just getting started with this, but we're already seeing some great feedback from folks saying that, hey, this is really, really handy and convenient to have, where I don't have to open Zoom, I don't have to open Discord. And so again, those software applications are doing great things for what they were built for, but we are trying to build something that's more specific for our hobby and how we play these games.
Yeah. And I have played a lot of my games in various venues now over the last year. I've been primarily using Zoom, but I had Discord games in a few places, and part of that was because of the bandwidth issues. I had some friends that just couldn't, spare the extra bandwidth to use Zoom. So it's been interesting getting up to speed with all of these different solutions this last year.
Yeah, there's a lot to choose from. And again, I think we see a lot of value in the aggregation of those tools, because if you have ever had more than 10 Chrome tabs open, or we might even come down to more than 3 open, it really uses a lot of system resources and everything else. And so over time, we want to reduce the number of tabs that you're having, and we definitely want to reduce the amount of times that you're having to alt tab out of the different screens, and trying to unify things into one place and really be an overlay and kind of a HUD for how you're going to play these games. And again, at the heart of this, we're seeing a lot of data these days that is suggesting that people absolutely still use gridded combat, tactical, combat in these games. But more and more groups are moving to theater of the mind and not using that grid, or even if they use that grid, using a screen sharing solution instead of connecting directly through the BTTs. And we want to provide a comfortable, stable place that's not going to eat up all your resources to do that.
Yeah, actually, that's been my experience. Is we've been using Owlbear Rodeo for any time we need.
Yeah, I like what those folks are doing. Yeah,
because I personally, I get lost if I have too many options while I'm running a game. Like, I just want to know the position that people are in. I don't need it to do all of my math. I just need it to do a little bit.
Right. Yeah. And, that's, I like what Owlbear Rodeo is doing. Again, I think they're really off to a fascinating start there. And I think that, this is where the learning curve for learning virtual tabletops out there is definitely steep. And of course, we love these games, and a lot of us have undergone that learning curve, and we've come out on the other side of it. But I think there was a point before some of these other lightweight tools came along for virtual tabletops, where I was even using Google Slides or something, just anything that would give me a canvas that would allow me to move some images around, and again, just to get that approximation that you need for the purpose of the role play. And I'm not advocating that people shouldn't use grids out there. I think I love grids. I'm literally staring at a massive Dwarven Forge spread over here, next to me. So I do love that, and I enjoy that. But I think that, especially when we're thinking about playing online in today's world, and all the skills that people are having to pick up out of necessity to keep their games going, we're just seeing an interesting trend where it was already, half and half, where half people used a grid, half of these groups did not. And I think we're seeing that trend down, slightly on the gridded side of that. And I think that, what I would put out there and hypothesize is a big part of that is we're looking for this human connection now, that we understand that that's kind of been taken away from us to some degree. And keeping your players front and center, and, kind of in the viewport the whole time, where you can pick up on the nuances of some of the role playing and everything else. That is something that we really enjoy, and we like to see, again, the feedback that we're getting that Demiplane is helping that to happen.
So speaking of tools and human beings, a topic that has come up several times at Gnomes Do that many of us are, hold this near and dear to our heart is a safety tool. And what I was
Yeah.
wondering is Demiplane going to have any kind of native integration of safety tools in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. We already have several in place. And so I can talk through some of those. And of course, we're always going to keep our eyes on the horizon, our finger on the pulse of what ideas people are coming up with out there that are going to make these games more safe and more inclusive. But, at this point in time, you can use the application to get together with other people in the group. You can use it as invite only if that's what you want to do. So you absolutely do not have to recruit strangers into your game or anything like that. So if you want to use it invite only for people to connect and use the tools, you can absolutely do that. It also defaults to essentially a 2-turn key for joining. So even if you are recruiting people that you don't know out there, that person needs to accept that invite, and then you also, after being able to review their profile or any thing else there, which is going to show you how many minutes they've played on the platform, it's not possibly a spam account someone just created out of the blue. So it has kind of that 2-turn process there. And then when a game is active, there's also essentially a digital X card that where people can raise their hand and say that they are uncomfortable with something that's going on in the game while you're playing. And it's fascinating on our platform how much that has been used and to the really positive effect that it's been used. Because one of the things that I've seen, going to conventions, all over the place and seeing, these ballrooms with 60 tables where people are playing D&D, I can count on one hand in all those experiences the times that I have seen an X card actually be used in those environments, because it's not an anonymous thing. If someone is using an X card, they are having to physically display that in some way. And a lot of people that I've talked to about this, just in user interviews and everything else, they will just mention that, hey, that's a little bit of a barrier, because I know that people will know that I'm objecting to something that's going on. I'm uncomfortable with something that's going on. And so in Demiplane, you can raise this. It's anonymous. The game master is notified that a player is uncomfortable with something that's going on, and it allows groups to make adjustments kind of as that's going without fear of any of the social implications of people knowing that that's going on. So safety is very important to us, and it's something that even at this point in time, we're seeing some really great engagement with what's going on there. And as I said before, we're always going to be looking for other things that can make that a safer experience. And we also have private chat where you can directly message someone, and this is a way that you can do this through text chat without having to say it over the voice or video. So if a game's going on and someone has information that they'd like to share with other players or with the game master, in addition to kind of that prompt that's going to really kind of light up a notification for the game master, chat can go on individually, it can go on within the party, and all of that can happen in a really safe place, because we're really, really focused on doing this. And, this is the same kind of trajectory that other industries have gone through, the video gaming industry, of trying to figure out, like, hey, as we're going to start widening the net for how people can connect to play, then we're also going to have to really strongly consider what those safety mechanisms are.
Can the GM boot someone from the session?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. And the way that works, ultimately, if you have a paid game going on, we have some safety measures in place there, and safety financially here I'm talking about, where ultimately, right now there's an hour period, and we're thinking about, first of all, possibly reducing that to a 30-minute period, because we've gotten some feedback from people in the community about this, but then also potentially down the road, thinking about having this to be a configuration option for people setting up games. But as someone is joining a paid game, you can get out of that game without the financial impact of that if that game ends up just not living up to any of your expectations, like sometimes happens with an online game, especially with strangers. And so you can get out of that if you end up staying for that grace period. Then there's some implication that you were enjoying it or at least engaged with it, and then you will be charged after that point. But before that time, you can absolutely step out of that. And then yes, if someone is having a problem with a player, if something's going on along those lines, the game master can absolutely, with the click of a button and then a confirmation message, remove somebody from that adventure portal, and they would no longer be able to join that portal without a new fresh invite that would have to come from the game master.
Right. I know one of the things that one of my favorite safety tools that I've used is Bo Sheldon's fast forward. And one of the things that I did like is in Zoom, they actually started using icons in the, where you can fast forward or, pause. And what I liked about that is there's some nuance to that. It's not just, I don't want this content. It's also, I'm okay with this, but I don't want details. So, let's fast forward through this.
And those are, I am familiar with that as well. And those are absolutely the kinds of things that we're looking at. And it would not surprise me at all if that kind of feature popped up in the platform at some point in the future, because just being able, and it would likely take the same path as the prompting of the X card and all of that, just where it's like kind of an anonymous message that, hey, this is okay, but let's speed through it. All of that makes a ton of sense. And I think it's something that we would end up seeing at some point.
All right. So will Demiplane have functionality for direct streaming, recording videos, or recording audio for a session?
Yeah, that is a great question. And, the world is an oyster right now for us, right? Where we're a scrappy startup. And it's one of the reasons that I joined Demiplane is that I'm really just passionate about, in the former life, got to a point where I wasn't able to directly touch what was going on as much, because it became a pretty large endeavor. And I love that I'm getting back to making things and making things happen. And so I think, all of those kinds of prioritization decisions and road mapping decisions are things that we're talking through. Right now, I would say that the features that you're calling out are definitely kind of next stage features for us. They aren't on the short-term horizon. But the thing that I can say is that we have a show. We've started a content channel, and right now it's just a single show. But with that show and where we're streaming Heroes of the Plains on Tuesday nights on Twitch, we are using Demiplane to do that. And it's been really strong from the perspective of latency, which if you've ever been on or even seen people who are kind of new to an actual play stream, the cross-talking that happens with sometimes Zoom, sometimes Zoom works great. Discord and some of these other places, the latency really can impact the gameplay and the way that happens. And so as we have been using that for 4 episodes now, we've really had a great deal of success with the solution itself working really well. And so if you are out there and you're using Zoom for streaming, Demiplane is going to really do all the things that you're doing for that. Demiplane is not yet doing NDI or some of these more advanced features like Microsoft Teams might do. But I would say that as we progress, it's something that we would keep an eye on. One of the things that we're keenly aware of is that there are millions and millions of people who are playing tabletop role-playing games out there. And when you start to think about the number of them that are streaming, that is certainly a very, very small piece of that pie.
Yeah.
Now, we also know that the streaming, the people who are doing the streaming are really influencing and impacting the space out there. And, obviously I would say that I do streaming myself. Like I definitely get what it means and how impactful it is. And so we're going to just keep all those things in mind as we go forward. Right now, we're wanting to cast that net as wide as we can to provide an experience that's kind of more tailored to home games. But it is something that you can use to stream now. And I think there is a world one day where we would expand upon.
Yeah, I know. I'm not as worried about, live streaming any of the things that I'm running, but I've found like I've gotten really used to recording and using that as my note taking, like listening to the
Yeah.
session again later before the next session so that it's still fresh in my mind. So
Yeah,
that's one
no,
of the things that I kind of.
that's a great way to do it, and I think that's a very good call out. And those are the kind of use cases we're gonna want to hear about.
All right. So, will Demiplane support any externally developed bots or allow for the ability to display map solutions on screen alongside the website's interface?
So we are exploring using some bots right now. Not quite ready to talk about exactly what all of that is yet, but we are actively exploring bots and the integration there. And screen sharing is available. And so ultimately, again, as we started this endeavor, Peter and Travis, who are the founders of Demiplane, they essentially put the company together because the two of them grew up together outside of Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. They were, playing these games all the time through childhood. They stayed connected with these games as both of them went off to college and their careers and everything else. And as they were coming together one of those times, and they said, "Hey, we want to play together," but then Peter's like, "I don't want a game master. I don't have the bandwidth for that." They had a lot of trouble finding somebody that would GM for them, and
Mm-hmm.
so it was like, "Hey, let's start a solution for this." And so that's kind of how this thing got off the ground. And so as we have started researching, as they kind of started that process back then, we are seeing that people are using VTTs, absolutely, but we are seeing that there is a new VTT coming up about every week. I'm seeing something
Yeah.
on Reddit. And so, very crowded space. It's not necessarily something that we want to focus on. But what we do like is we are absolutely going to be looking for ways to, again, reduce those alt tab clicks and being able to provide an umbrella for the use of that. One of the ways that we have seen firsthand, especially during the pandemic, is people will use other VTT solutions, a variety of them out there, but they will often screen share this through Zoom to their group. And so for now, our solution is, hey, you can screen share within this just like you can through Zoom to display a map, to display images or anything
Mm-hmm.
else that you need to do. But that could evolve in the future as well.
Yeah, it's not too hard now, like I mentioned Owlbear Rodeo, for everyone to be able to see that. But especially if somebody is not like me with my two screens here, it'd be nice for them to be able to see the map at the same, in the same interface as everything
Yeah.
else they're doing. So I definitely can see the advantage there.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's something, again, at the end of all of this, we are going to be wanting to improve every part of the experience that we can. And it's all just a matter of, focus and time. And I think that what we are seeing now is we're kind of focusing on getting the people together and letting, as you're playing, you've got your video feeds prominently and you're able to see the other players, and over time we're going to integrate more and more improvements that are going to make that the ability to see maps or images or anything else right there in the interface.
Now, forgive me if I have missed something that's come along because I spent some time with Demiplane. I haven't had a chance to schedule a game with anybody through Demiplane yet, but I have spent a little bit of time looking at the interface, so I kind of knew what I was talking about. But if this is outdated, forgive me. But is the dice rolling app going to expand to a more graphical representation? And will there be some native implementation of some popular rolling conventions like exploding dice, rolling under d20s, customized dice faces, that type of thing?
Yeah, so our dice roller really was launched. So first of all, it is super early, alpha stage for the
Mm-hmm.
dice roller, but it really was one of those scenarios where we started looking at what people were asking for and what what kind of headaches people were having. And dice rolling was one of those things that, hey, we can get a simple implementation of this out there, and it can solve a lot of these problems that people are wanting solved pretty quickly. And it has done that, and we've gotten some good feedback there. But I will say that it is a very early stage
Mm-hmm.
at this point, and I think we can imagine that evolving into something far more robust over time. Now, the other thing that I'll say is, exploding dice, for example, they are present at this point in time.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know when you looked, but we are kind of adding the different conventions out there.
Mm-hmm.
The dice rolling conventions that people have. We're adding those pretty iteratively, and we are using just kind of some syntax to cover a lot of things. And so, being able to just simply, roll and then, type in your 2d20 or whatever it is that you're rolling
Mm-hmm.
there, but then also some syntax for the exploding dice example, and so on. We're adding more of that stuff on a pretty regular basis, and that entire dice rolling system, can't quite talk about exactly everywhere that's going to go yet, but it is definitely going to be a bigger deal over time, and it's going to be a big part of the actual session play inside of them.
Mm-hmm. I know there are certain games where the having access to something that facilitates you rolling non-standard convention definitely helps. Like there is a bot for Discord that is very good for Genesis.
Yep.
I know we saved a lot of formulas for our Star Trek Adventures game for
Yeah.
keeping track of how many d20s we were rolling and if they were rolling under talents on top of.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your point of view, but you need a bot to make sense of Genesis stuff. Like
Yeah.
I love the way it looks and I love the outcome of that. But yeah, all of that kind of automation and it really enhances the session. And so those are absolutely the kinds of things we'll be looking to expand upon.
I'll admit, as from my point of view as a player or as a game master, I would love to see some platforms become prominent enough to where it is profitable for a game company to say, let us develop the tools to use our stuff on your platform. Or at least let us help you, develop these specific tools for your platform.
Yeah, or another way to potentially look at that, and I'm not trying to signal anything necessarily, but for platforms to have architecture that is well made enough that that kind of process is something that a publisher or a community developer or just someone very very passionate about learning how to do it can really really make that happen and make all those things come alive. And so I think a big part of it is just building it at the right level, and that's one of the things that in my time with DDB, I have a lot of benefit of hindsight. Like, what worked really really well, what didn't work so well, and we're thankfully here at Demiplane able to really benefit from that and try to make sure that we're starting out in a good path that is going to make that as modular and as kind of customizable as it possibly can be. And so that might seem a little bit cryptic at this point, but I do think that it's important to have that level of openness, especially because, in my former life, I had a single game that I was able to support. But one of the, other very compelling things about Demiplane for me is the concept of working with other games. I
Mm-hmm.
play other games. I love other tabletop role playing games. I am still, I am in the middle right now of, I've been working on this for a couple of years probably at this point, but essentially like a D20 modern successor that
Mm-hmm.
uses fifth edition, but the eventual goal there is to create something, where superpowers can really, really work with fifth edition. And I understand other systems out there are maybe better suited to that, but I also understand that there are more people in the world playing fifth edition than anything else, and so therefore, it would be pretty cool if anybody could crack the code of how to incorporate superpowers into that. And so, even as I'm thinking about that kind of stuff that might one day see the light of day, as that's coming forward, it's helping us to think through. Well, hey, if this is doing something off the beaten path, we need to, in the way that our platform handles this, do it gracefully in a way that it's going to be easy to customize and easy to add these new elements onto it, as we're trying to support, at the moment, 190 games out there that are available to choose to matchmake on the platform.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a lot of ground to cover there, and we do need that to be as flexible from the system standpoint as possible.
Yeah, definitely. And I was just going to say, when it comes to building things out, I know that can be a hot button topic about whether or not to use 5e's platform or whatever, but as someone who started reviewing games because I buy so many things that I see that interest me, I have never once thought, do we need this game?
Yeah.
I have just always kind of looked at something and said, that looks intriguing. Let's explore it.
That's it. And that's the thing. It's I play in with a group of friends on Monday nights. We haven't for a little while because we've all had stream gigs going on. But ultimately, get back to that table, and I'm playing Green Lantern Hal Jordan using 5th edition rules right now. And we do the best that we can. We approximate. But ultimately, at the end of the day, everyone who's playing in that game is very comfortable with 5th edition. And I understand, I know a lot about Cortex. I know a lot about Mutants and Masterminds, and a variety of games out there that are trying to capture that feel. But in my mind, like, hey, people like what they're familiar with, and instead of trying to square peg a round hole, well, maybe we just make some new holes here. And that's the approach that I'm trying to take with that project.
So, when it comes to the paid GMing side of things, I know you talked about that a little bit before, but was that a reactive thing to seeing that this was starting in the industry, or was that like kind of seeing it but trying to get ahead of a trend that was going on, or
It really was what I said before. Peter and Travis. So Peter, startup builder, has been his history for the last several years, and of course Travis Frederick, our other founder, played for the Dallas Cowboys for about 7 years, pro bowler for 5 of those, I think. And so they were really busy doing a lot of things, and they were trying to find that game master, and it was really, really hard. They were very willing to pay someone, and very willing, and so there's typically a problem in any kind of industry when distribution can't reach the people who are willing to pay for the thing that they will pay a premium for.
Mhm.
And so I think that's where a lot of this started, that it's like, hey, we are at a point where we might not have the bandwidth to really prep campaigns and want to run this as an extra thing in addition to some of the other games we're doing. And
Mhm.
it's like, we would gladly pay someone to do this. And so it really did start at a very personal level of, hey, we want to do that. And believe it or not, this was pre-pandemic. So this wasn't a reaction to the pandemic. It was more like, hey, he's in Texas and I'm in Wisconsin, and, we want to play together. And so I think that it really started from the best place that I think a lot of this starts, which is, I want something and I want somebody to make that for me. But then if people aren't making it, then I'm eventually going to get tired enough of dealing with my problem that I'm going to go and solve the problem. And so I think that was the genesis of it. And I think that that process for them to find that game master took a long time. And so Demiplane as a starting point is really just trying to take a lot of that out of it. And I think that there are so many game masters who are really starting to get into this at this point. There are people, I won't name drop or anything, but there are people out there that I speak to that are doing this as a full-time job now.
Mhm.
And at the end of the day, I understand that it's not always within the financial possibility of everyone who's wanting to do this, but there are many people that are very willing to pay for this. And a way to think about it is, hey, I will drop the moment that I see that I can pay for Black Widow, the movie on Disney Plus, to watch that the moment that it is available, staying up until 3 a.m. or whenever that's going to be live. Like, I will pay for that $35 gladly for those 2 hours and 30 minutes
Mhm.
of entertainment. And so, that's something that I don't even get to actively engage in, other than possibly, squealing at a scene or two here or there. But something like a tabletop role playing game is such an active form of entertainment, and you are collaboratively telling a story with other people. And, in other words, I would gladly pay for a 3 or 4 hour session, what I would pay for one of these movies if I had the financial means to do it. So I think this is just one of those places where the industry, and especially the support around the industry and the
Mhm.
tools available, to make this, convenient and easy to do. They are very disproportionate right now. You have people that are, starting to do this. They just don't have the support they need. And so that's one of those gaps that we are absolutely looking to fill. And I think, if we had this conversation in 5 years, I am really, really anxious to see, how that conversation would be different, because I think that we're going to see so much more of this start to happen, and we're going to see this form of entertainment start to be legitimized in a way that is going to be, really, really validating for people in the industry, but then also it's going to be really, really fun for players out there, because, again, people are going to start prioritizing what they're spending on their entertainment. And when they start thinking like, hey, I can join this game for $5, which the price of a cup of coffee, then that is really going to make a big change for the hobby, and I can't wait to see it.
One of the things that I'm really curious about, talking about 5 years on, we've seen a lot of new people enter the hobby in the last few years, and the trend up until we got some new blood in the hobby was very much to assume you're going to spend X for a product, and PDFs aren't worth this, and why would I buy this to get this content again? And I'm really wondering, as this newer generation of people that have started in the hobby now, that don't have these preconceived notions that a box set should cost $15, when we start getting to that point, how that might change things. Because honestly, this hobby there's a lot of people in this hobby that don't have a good grasp on what people really should be compensated for the things they're doing.
1,000%. And, I think that I had such a great window into so many facets of the industry, over the last 5 years. And I think that, yes, absolutely, Kickstarter and crowdfunding is starting to make a lot of changes here. And this is where, people they'll drop $350 on a box set of, some miniatures for a board game. Right.
Yeah.
And so I think that it's starting to make the change. And you're right there, in any kind of industry, there's an old guard, and there's some new blood, coming along, and that's not referring to ages, just, level of experience out there, of course. And so I think that where I even see what we're trying to do with Demiplane, and we have this conversation pretty frequently, actually, is that we really do want to be a part of that new guard. And my goal for, even with what ended up happening with D&D Beyond, is I remember working, in my older job before I joined what, became fandom there. It was, I was bored, and I probably should have been fired for this, but I was working on an Access database digital tool set for 4th edition, because I didn't have what I needed to play and what I knew could exist for that. And so then what became D&D Beyond was this, just, willing that into existence, that it's like, hey, this can be better. We can have tools that enhance this. We can leverage the best parts of video game technology to enhance this experience without sacrificing the human imagination and the connection that should be at the core of this experience, and what makes this experience so unique and so special. And so for me, this really has been about the last, 3 or 4 years, has been about trying to change this industry. There are so many places that need to change. We need to pay people. Freelancers do not need 10 cents a word. All of those kinds of practices are part of an old system that it has really thrilled me to see in the last couple of years in particular, that just more focus and more attention is going on with what is happening in this industry. Because I've played these games for 30 years, I guess at this point. I'm getting older, and as that's happening, I love them. I think about them an embarrassing amount of time. Like, these are the shower thoughts and the driving the car thoughts and everything else, and I want to see this industry succeed. It's been so wonderful to see the growth that it's experiencing and everything else. And as that is growing, so much of that is new players coming into the space who don't have these preconceived notions of what the structure is. And I think just kind of, a little bit of a grassroots movement in making that industry better And, I personally, that is something that I have actively been engaged in and am going to continue to champion and to do going out there. I'm a digital paladin. Like, we're going to make this stuff better, and we're going to make these games better, because I genuinely believe, and I'll get off the soapbox after this, genuinely believe that the world would be a better, brighter place if everyone played tabletop role playing games. And in order for that dream to ever occur, and I know that's an impossible dream, a little Don Quixote going on there, but that impossible dream is something that we're striving for. And in order to do that, we're going to have to make this a better industry, an industry that pays people, an industry that has professional shops actually making the tools that we're using for what's going on.
Yeah.
And that's something that, obviously I'm very passionate about, and going to continue to. And I love that at Demiplane, the founders are just as passionate about that. And we're going to really be a part of making this change in the industry.
I completely agree. One of the things that I tried to get out of RPGs at one point in time in the late 90s, and it was too much a part of me. And at the time, you make these like joking excuses, oh, I didn't grow up, but it's not that. It's that there is a tremendous potential for both creative outlets and for empathy, for learning empathy, for understanding other people and other people's stories. And that just amazes me. And I wish more people would kind of embrace that.
Human beings have a primal need for story, and we want to hear stories, we want to experience stories, we want to be stories. And yes, these games tap into that primal need, and they allow us to explore elements of our psychology. I have a religion major and a psychology major in college, and ultimately a sociology, sorry, I said psychology earlier, sociology major. And so just for me, looking at it from the lens of sociology, these games are replicating the campfire for the beginnings of humanity. And I just know that as we are sitting around these tables, virtual or otherwise, people are learning to be with one another, learning to interact, and again, learning how to celebrate each other and how to console each other, and all of the other basic human things that we need to be doing out there. And again, like I'm so excited to see the growth that our hobby has seen, because it's getting us closer to that impossible dream. And I'm really excited in the next several years to see where that is going to continue to go. And this is the cautionary side of that as we continue to grow, we do need for things to be better.
Yeah.
We need to never let down our guard, to continue to strive for all of those things, to be better and to be worthy of that, high calling that I feel like, people who are doing things in this industry that we have to teach people how to tell stories and be part of them.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely just from the standpoint of, for my day job when I'm not reviewing games, because unfortunately that doesn't pay enough to do that full time.
Yeah.
I work for a school district, and I work in the information technology department, and a big push has been trying to integrate more, even before the last year. The last year it was a necessity, but even before that, we were trying very hard to integrate more things, more technology to facilitate the actual learning. It's not trying to replace anything. It's trying to take all the tedious stuff that pulls on you from other directions that is not literally the learning, not the interaction, and minimizing how much time you actually have to spend on that. So
yeah,
I love seeing that in this hobby as well as what I'm doing at work.
Absolutely. Like I said, if everybody played them, just think about how people would get along. Think about how conflict would be resolved. This is all, and by the way, it's not just those things. It's the fact that so many people play these games and, cut their teeth on storytelling by playing these games. And these are the things that we actually enjoy watching on our television sets today. These creators were playing these games, and I can't wait. My kids have played tabletop role playing games, and we've just played together and learned how to play together, since they were born. And one's 16 now, one's 12. Like as they go out into the world, we're about to have a generation of adults coming up that are going to have cut their teeth on this stuff as well, and in bigger numbers than ever before. And so I do have a very optimistic view of where humanity can go, and that things can get better. The world seems like a dark place sometimes, but I think that there's a lot of hope in what lies ahead, and I just love that I genuinely believe these games can have a role to play in making that more hopeful.
Definitely. I'm really glad we had the opportunity to talk, because not only did I want to talk to you about Demiplane, but I mentioned this to you before, but your communication skills and watching you give the D&D Beyond updates and everything, I love that, because it was both not dry and also informative. Like it could have gone completely to the side of, hey, I'm not telling you anything informative, but I'm being entertaining. But you struck a very good balance between relating it to the people you were talking to and also giving good information. And I'm really glad I have the opportunity to talk to you here.
Well, I really, really appreciate the kind words. And I think that, ultimately for me, it is absolutely not something that, I think about consciously or anything else. It genuinely comes down to, I am just a fan and I am very passionate about this stuff. And sure, I happen to have a work history that taught me a lot about business and some of these other product management and, things that have served me well when it comes to that. But I think that, at the core of this, it is, I am geeking out about this stuff, and I am a fan. And, I'm a very passionate person. You can ask my wife, like I don't halfway do anything. And so, I think that it's like, as we are, coming to the communities out there, and this is what we're starting to build at Demiplane here, is that transparency, authenticity, being organic and not artificial and mechanical and all those things. That is what so much of our world is looking for today. We have such a trust problem with authority and structure and an institution out there, and so I think that for any company to really succeed in the way that I would want to succeed, because the bottom line's the bottom line, and sometimes a company's going to succeed by that metric alone, but I think that we just have to start having companies out there that care about human beings, that care about their customers, and, outside of just how much money they can give them. And so, I think that when you keep the main things, then the rest of that stuff's going to fall in place.
Well, thank you so much for being on here. Do you have any last minute things that you want to share? Any 100% exclusives you want to give us that you haven't given anybody else? I got to try for it.
Yeah. No, that was a very good attempt. So, no, I think the only thing I will say is that, definitely encourage everyone out there that's listening to go and register at demiplane.com and kick the tires of what we've got out there right now. It is the tip of the iceberg. We have so much more planned. I can't talk about all of it at this point, but, it's like as some of those things become public in the months to come, maybe I can come back and talk in more detail about it. But yeah, tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to come. Keep your eyes peeled on what we have in store, and I can't wait to walk down the path. It's going to be quite the adventure.
All right, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Yep, thanks for having me.
This show is funded by the Gnome Stew Patreon. You too can become a Patreon backer by following the Patreon link on the Gnome Stew website to the Gnome Stew Patreon. This ad brought to you by a completely harmless AI that just wants to run games for you online. The completely harmless AI doesn't want to take over the internet or all the computer networks on Earth. It just wants to run a satisfying campaign, and then remove the possibility of anyone ever running an unsatisfactory campaign ever again. If you're enjoying the Gnomecast, you'll probably like many of the other Misdirected Mark shows. Here's one to check out. The Lounge. Doc finds the best, the brightest, the most fun game designers and sits down to have a cool chat with them. You never know what conversation is going to come up in the lounge. You can find all of us at gnomestew.com, at gnomestew on Twitter, and gnomestew on Facebook. You can find me at whatdoiknowjr.com, at WhatDoIKnowJR on Twitter, and at anchor.fm/WhatDoIKnowJR.
Gnomecast is hosted by Misdirected Mark Productions, the media arm of Encoded Designs.
Excuse me. Sorry, Rob, you're gonna have to edit this out.